was something, like the first part was vocation, right?
Yeah.
But then there was something else that I don't quite remember.
Called to be vocation, and then ministering within your vocation.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the thing I remember,
then do you want to throw in
was just vocation,
JP2?
but it was something else also within vocation that was supposed to talk about.
The priesthood, specifically.
Okay.
In relation to JP2, if you can.
Oh, that'll be hard. Well, I guess it's good to be here. It's my first time with the youth group, and I was saying, Elizabeth, it's my first time in this building ever. I've been here almost a year, I guess, and I haven't been in this building yet. So, I guess today we'll talk about vocation and a little bit about in the process of my vocation as well, to kind of like picture a little bit of vocation. Vocation is a calling. It's a calling from God. And everybody have a different vocation, and God is calling you to do something different. Whatever that is unique to you. Because you are unique, because you are different, because God made you unique in that way. And so the vocation that you have and the way that vocation is expressed and shared, it's very different from everybody in that sense. So God called you in different ways. We don't know how He's going to do it, through who He's going to do it, but He's going to call you to something. You know, some to the married life, some to the religious life, some to just, you know, to the single life, I guess. There's people who are not called to marry, but are also not called to the priesthood, but they are called to share their life with others in a different way in itself. But God calls in different ways, through ways that we don't even realize and we don't even know. But the main thing is that we have to be open to listening to that in itself. There's, like, for example, in my vocation as a priest, there were other people who were also called to the priesthood. But as you can see, and as you meet different priests, you realize that our personality is very different. The way that we approach things are very different. And the things that we do and the way that we connect with people is very different. And that's because although we are all called to the priesthood, all the priests, each one is done through their individual connection with God and through their individual personality in itself, in that sense. As we start our journey in life, we start to try to find out, what am I called to do? What am I trying to do in life? What is God calling me to do in the sense? And as I am going through my life, I need to be open to listening to what God is calling me to do in that sense. And that's the first thing that we had to remember in vocation. You had to be open to listen. And you had to be open to follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit, which is the most difficult part in itself. Because a lot of times we are filled with all these noises from the outside. Mom wants me to be something, Dad wants me to be something else. They always expect something from me. At the same time, I don't even know what to do. My friends are going one way, other friends are doing something else. Everybody seems to have everything already set and ready, and here I am, just in the middle of not knowing what to do with myself in itself. And a lot of times, because of all these noises of people pulling me one way or another, or people trying to get me to do something, I lost pretty much the voice to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit in itself. And the first thing that I need to do, I need to be able to be honest with myself, I need to be patient with myself, and I need to be able to take time to be quiet with myself, where I am truly able to talk and discern about what is really God calling me to do in my life. When we follow God's calling, like I say, it can be through different people, it can be through friends, it can be to just something that is ignited in my heart once I see it, in that sense. Once I listen to the Holy Spirit, once I found something that really, really feels me. There's a lot of things that are going to bring me joy in life, but not everybody is going to make me feel full, like there was something missing. Because, there's a lot of things that I myself enjoy that didn't require me to be a priest. But nothing filled me, and nothing gave me the fulfillment and the satisfaction like working as in the church, working as being in there, and in a little way God was calling me into that, something else deeper, kind of like a deeper call of giving myself more deeply through the priesthood in itself. And that's something that in the vocation first, we need to be able to find that. We need to, we might spend a little longer than others as seeking it, searching for it, but when the time is right, you will find it. That's why it's very important for you to not be too desperate or not be patient with yourself in that sense. Because once you try to rush anything, then you fail immediately and you make wrong decisions in itself. That's why it's important to know that you are unique. Don't compare yourself with others, because they might have the talent to think really fast, but for me, I might take a little bit longer in that sense. One of the big things whenever God calls us in that vocation is the fear of actually accepting that vocation. Because a lot of times whenever we are faced with something that God is calling us, it can also feel overwhelmed. None of that is going to be taken away because we are humans. There's always going to be fear in everything that we do. We're always going to feel that is too much, that is too big. But if we remember that if God is calling us to do something, it's because He's giving us the strength, and He's giving us the tools, and He knows that we are able to do it. Remember that God knows you more than you know yourself. That He sees things that you don't see about yourself. And something that for you, because of your fear, might feel overwhelmed, He knows that you are capable of doing. A God who loves you will never give you something that will make you suffer. He will never give you something that you won't be able to handle, that you won't be able to accomplish. Because He loves you, and because He wants to be with you in that sense. And because He trusts you and He knows you, He knows that you can do it. In my experience as I was growing up, there was a moment in my life as a child that I was playing outside of the church. It was normal. People in Mexico used to play outside. The kids while the parents are in mass. Because that way kids are not making a mess or anything. It's like small town, everybody knows each other, so it's safe in a way. So in that sense, I was playing outside, and as I was picking up a toy that I was playing with, I remember that I looked up and I was like right at the door of the church. It was just like a straight whole aisle, I guess we can call it. And it was the priest in the altar holding the host and the chalice at that moment. And for some reason, I don't even know why, I don't even know the reason that I felt this way, but I felt like hypnotized by it. I feel like it was such a beautiful image. And I felt like this desire of, wow, that's beautiful. I feel so attracted to it that I told myself that that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do one day. I want to be able to hold the chalice and the host. And that's something that for that moment on, kind of like told myself that I wanted it, but at the same time, I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know what being a priest meant. I didn't know sacrifice. I didn't know, everything that you had to go through to being a priest. So at that moment, I was like, for some reason, I feel called. I feel fulfilled. I feel like that joy and happiness. And I feel like there was nothing around me, but it was just like that image in me. And as I grew older and realized what a priest was, I began to be afraid. Because it was, this is too much, this is too big, this is not for me. So for me, I had the idea in my mind, but I was pushing it away, and I was saying no, and the idea was there, and I was telling the Lord, okay, this idea doesn't leave me, but I don't really want to, I think this is too much. I won't be able to handle it. This is going to be way more than I can handle. So I don't want to waste my time going to the seminary when then, at that time I didn't even know there was a seminary. but I don't want to start doing this if I'm not going to be able to just do it for the rest of my life. It's going to be a waste of my time in that sense. So I keep saying no, no, and I remember that, you know, nobody knew this was my secret. Nobody had any idea about this. My parents never even thought about it. I was the rebel. I was the bad kid. I was the one who was always, you know, like saying things to them and like sleeping out and all this stuff. And they were like never in their minds thought that I would ever become a priest. Even when I told them, they're like, "You really?" I was like, "Yeah, well." So, you know, it's just to show that God sometimes calls us, but at the same time, we don't leave the part that we are humans in itself. So as I grew older, we immigrated to the United States. I still had this idea in my head, and I keep saying no, no. So I told the Lord, okay, you know, if you want this from me, then you have to give me a clear sign. And my condition was like, I need an angel to come down from heaven and tell me that this is what you want from me. Because it's like, I'm not going to waste my time going through this if it's not for me. And it was like, I need something, but I need something big. I need something obvious. I need to be certain. I need security, and I need this to be for sure that this is really what you want me, and this is going to happen. Otherwise, no. So I remember that, you know, I went to masses with my family. My parents were, you know, good Catholics in a way. So they were always going to mass on Sundays, and as long as I was under their house, I was going to mass with them on Sundays. So it wasn't an option whether I wanted it or not. So as I was there, a lot of times I was the one of the people who would be at the door. We were a very small church in Guayaquil, and you know, a lot of standing people for the Spanish Mass, and I was the one, me and my brother, who were always at the door. We never did altar servers, we never served in any other way. I didn't even know what a holy hour was. We used to go to some of the events whenever my parents went, but it was more of the social part, it wasn't much of the other stuff. We were never like, we didn't know anything, no altar servers, no readers, nothing in that sense. So I was always the one on the back next to the door, and I remember that it was often enough that people will come, you know, before the mass beginning, and they will be like, "Are you a seminarian?" And I just kept saying, "No." Why would you say that I'm a seminarian? So I could say no, and then, you know, a few days or something passed, and then again somebody just said like, "Oh, are you a seminarian?" I'm like, no, why would people just keep saying, "Are you a seminarian?" They had like a seminarian face. And then whenever we went to another parish, I was like, they'd come to me like, "Are you the pastor?" I'm like, no, why would you say that? Like, do I have like a priest, like a seminarian face? Why people keep confusing me with this? And I keep saying no, no, and no, and you know, it was like, "Oh, that's not for me. I would never be that. You know, I don't know. I would never enter the seminary. A pastor, me? No, no, never." So I kept saying all this stuff to the people, ironically. And then finally, I was able to face my fear. I was about to graduate from high school, we can call it. And it was like, you know, you either do one or the other. It's now time for you to decide. I was thinking about teaching because as a Hispanic who had to learn English, the teachers were always really close to me. So I really always had a good relationship with my teachers. They were always trying to help me, and I was, they were also kind of protective of me as well. And I always enjoyed, like in Mexico, I never liked school. I was always like, I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to study. My mom always had a hard time taking me to school because I never wanted to go. But like here, I found a little bit of comfort and happiness in that environment, I guess, because it was really the closeness that I developed with my teachers. So in that sense, I was doing a little bit, like I was starting to enjoy school. I enjoyed the environment. I used to do a lot of stuff in my school. I used to help a lot. I was a kid that everybody hated because the teachers love it, you know. So I was that kind of kid, and as I was moving forward, I thought like, well, priesthood is too much, it's too hard, I won't be able to do it, it's too much sacrifice. But I really enjoy, I guess, school. And I was deciding to just do that. I was like, that's the way I'm going to go. But this idea of the priesthood never left me. It was always there. It was always on my mind. And no matter how much I tried to shake it off, it wasn't leaving, and I wasn't seeing the angel. And it was like, like, what do I do? Because I'm about to graduate. I need to do something with myself. Do I really want to go to teaching, or do I want to go into priesthood? It's like like all these things were going on there in my mind until all my family went to a retreat called Cursillo, that they were loving it. It was like they changed their life. It was great. And for me, it was like they were, well, I don't know if you know, but like with Hispanics, it's like once they find something like that they really love, that is great, they just keep like asking. They get so annoying. Every time you see them, they're like, oh, you should go here. Oh, we're inviting you. And the worst part it was my family who went. So my parents wasn't pushing us, but my uncles were. So every time we saw them, they're like, oh, you should come. There's a retreat coming up. You should see it. It's going to be great. We kept saying like, no. We just start running away from them. We try to avoid the conversation. We try to avoid them because it was like annoying. Until one time it was like, curiosity killed the cat. So I was like, what's so great about this? And they're like so into it and they love it so much. Fine, so I'll try it. The retreat was good in itself. However, it's not like a retreat for young people. I was around 17 or so at the time. So it was more for people who have lived a little and have a lot of things to meditate. It's about kind of like returning to the faith and things like that. So it's good, but I didn't get as much as I could from it. But one of the things that did happen in that retreat was that I had a holy hour. It was about to, like closer to graduation. It was my senior year. I needed to make a decision, and I was like, I still have this idea of the priesthood, but I really don't want to do it. So in that holy hour, I took that time to talk to the Lord. And for me, it was the moment that I told the Lord, okay, I've been thinking about teaching. This idea of the priesthood doesn't leave. And what do I want to do teaching? And at that moment, I started to be honest with myself. What is it that I am running away from the priesthood? And then why am I going into teaching? Or that's what I was thinking at the moment. I realized that I was afraid. That it was this fear that was keeping me away from all this idea of the priesthood. And I wanted to go into teaching because teaching for me was similar to the priesthood, but I didn't have to sacrifice and do as much as a teacher in itself. And then at that moment I realized that this is good. I do enjoy it, but it doesn't fulfill me. It doesn't really make me whole in that sense. And this is an idea that I've been trying to take away from my mind for a long time, and it's not leaving. So my idea was, okay, Lord, let's make a deal. I'll try, I'll apply, I go through the process, I do whatever I need to do. And if this is for me, then you're going to make it happen. But if this is not for me, I trust that they're going to kick me out, you're going to let me go, and then you know when and where, and you know why at that moment and in that place. And I'll trust you with this. My idea was, at least I want to try it and say it's not for me. I don't want to be the type who was, I always wanted it, I had the idea, but I didn't give it a try. So I decided I'll try it. It's not going to be for me, I'm going to be out, and that idea is going to be out of my mind. So I started the process into going into the seminary. So we cannot take the human part from the spiritual part. Going to the seminary is a little bit like going to college, meaning that I had to turn in an application for the diocese. I had to turn in an application for the seminary that they're going to send me. I need to be interviewed by the vocation director. Then I need to be interviewed by a board of vocations, which is composed of laity, people from the diocese, like school people, laity, workers and priests in itself. And if they find me worthy and they find me that they see something in me, then they present me to the bishop, and then the bishop will make their final decision whether they accept me or not. Before that happened, I had to go through a psychological evaluation, both written and an interview with a psychologist in that sense, because I need to be able to go through all the process and stuff. So they had to make sure that I am kind of like all the priests are healthy enough mentally in a way for that process. As I went through the process and I say yes to the Lord, I remember that before all this process happened, I finished a retreat. I was coming out, and as I was coming out, I finished the retreat. I went home. The next weekend we went to mass. We were renovating the parish. We were in the parish hall, and as I was leaving and the priest was closing, I was thinking to myself, I guess now I need to talk to the priest about this, and I don't know, how should I do this? What should I say? What's happening here? And at that moment, the priest, as he was coming out, he was closing the church, and I didn't know how to begin this conversation. And I remember that he just looked at me, and he just said, have you ever thought about being a priest? And for me, it was like, it's like, it's now never, I guess. It was like, sure, yes, I actually thought about it. So that was the moment how everything began. We talked that week that followed. We talked about, what I was going through, the discernment process, and we begin a process that he's showing me what a priest does in itself. And in that process, I was learning to know better whether this is really what I want to do or not. This is something that is, as things progressed, everything just went into place. And whenever I went into the seminary, I realized that there were people who actually heard a voice, or who actually saw something, and then they find out that it was their vocation. And I was like, I've been asking you like all these years, like, why didn't you just manifest it in the same way? But I found out that a lot of times God manifests through other people in itself. Sometimes people tell us and show us things, see things in us that we don't see ourselves. And sometimes it's God talking through others by guiding us. That's what I say, we never know. We never know when this is, how things are going to happen, through who God is going to talk to us, and how things are going to play out in our life. Sometimes inspiration comes from the people that we least expected in itself. Seminary is around 8 years. Now, for a regular somebody who's never been to college or study anything, if you already have a career, it's around 6 years. Now it's around 7 because they're adding another years, which is like pastoral years and things like that. It's you study philosophy, which is kind of like 4 years of philosophy, and then you study theology in itself. You need both of them in order to fully understand the scriptures and really understand what's going on in the church. They both kind of talk a little bit about the same thing, but through different ways. Philosophy is all about the men or humans, God, and reality through reason. Everything is logical, while theology is pretty much those three things through reason and faith and revelation, what is being revealed through us through the scriptures in itself. So that's a little bit of kind of difference, but in order to know theology better, you have to have some philosophy background in itself to make more sense. The faith is not pretty much against science in itself. So it's like 4 years that we had to go, like 8 years that we go to the seminary. Going through the seminary doesn't mean that you made it. Going through the seminary means that you have 8 years to discern whether this is for you or not. You probably heard that there's people who left the seminary who are no longer there because it's a process. It's a process where the church discerns whether this is your vocation, and at the same time you are discerning whether it's your vocation. Sometimes there are people who really think that this is their vocation and they're ready for this, but then the church says, this is not really your vocation. We don't really see the change that you need to have, or the transformation in order for you to take what being a priest actually is in itself. So it's also sometimes the church who tell us no. So when you are in the seminary, you live with the constant not knowing whether, this is really you will continue or not. It can be you, God showing you that it's not your way, or it can be the church just saying, okay, you are great and you are somebody who loves God, but God wants you in a different place in being a priest in itself. So it's a long process, it's a lot of discerning. It's a great process because you get to know yourself, you get to encounter yourself, because you work with a spiritual director, you work with a formation team who helps you to transform and shape yourself according to what a priest should be in itself, and they're giving you guidance and they're telling you the things that are not working out, the things that need to change, and if you do the work, and if they see that you are putting the effort and doing things about it, then things move along in itself. Before you get to ordination, that's the moment that they make a final discernment, and that you yourself make a final discernment. You have to submit a letter to petition the bishop to ordain you, and then the team of formation in the seminary, as long with the vocation team in your diocese, come together and they make the final vote whether they approve you for ordinations or not. They might say, well, no, he's kind of lazy, you need to delay him because he needs to learn how to work. Then they can delay you for a moment or for a year or so. But if they say, well, everything seems fine, he seems to be working, everything's going well, then they might say, okay, we approve him for holy orders in itself. As we move into holy orders is the sacrament that we receive in itself. It's the moment that our hands are anointed and the impositions of our hands by the bishop is also done unto us, where the Holy Spirit comes to us and our hands are consecrated to celebrate the Eucharist. Because through the sacraments of holy orders, we become in persona Christi. We are kind of like acting in the person of Christ in itself. Meaning that it's not me who does things, it's Christ through me who do all these things in itself. I had the power to do absolutely nothing whenever I'm acting as a priest in the sacrament. It's God himself who is forgiving sins, who is transforming the bread and the wine into his body, into his blood. And it's God himself through me and through these hands who were anointed, who bring people into the church through baptism and all the other sacraments in itself. That's why the sacrament is very important and it's essential in itself, because the sacrament of holy orders is a sacrament that is kind of dedicated to providing sacraments and life into the church in itself. We must remember that everything in our church comes from the Eucharist. The center of our faith is the Eucharist, and everything that we do comes from it, and all the sacraments come from the Eucharist. And so the Eucharist is the fountain who feeds and fuels all the church in itself. And the priests are pretty much the ministers and the ones who are able to bring that forth. And in itself, it's just participating in the priesthood of Christ himself. And that's why it's very important, and that's why it's something that is completely, we dedicate our whole life just to that service of the people and the church. So vocation is something that, like I said, everybody's different. Everybody's called to something else. And that's going to be according to you. It's about listening. It's about not being afraid. It's about understanding that God is there, and it's about trusting in God, Never compare yourself with others in that aspect. I hear that a lot in confession. People comparing themselves and they suffer because of it. Never compare yourself in any way possible with the success of others, because you are unique and you're doing your things on your own pace in itself. Now, in the human part of going through all of this, there's always fear. Fear never goes away. Anxiety never goes away. The pressures are there. You know, studying theology, philosophy and theology it's a lot of academics, a lot of reading, a lot of essays that you have to write, especially philosophy. It's all about thinking. It's all about reading all these philosophers. It's all about these people who, you know, sometimes it's very difficult and complicated to understand in itself. But it's all about a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of writing. So all of those stuff are there. You're always afraid. You're always not certain whether you are doing really good. Sometimes you see, like I said, when we compare, we are done for. We see people who are very smart, who have everything, and you hear struggling, and then they are kicked out or they leave the seminary, and you're thinking, if that person who was like so intelligent and so holy left, you know, what's there for me to be here in itself? But at the end of the day, you know, it's all of our fears that kind of like are there. When we listen to God, doesn't mean that all these things disappear completely, but we trust that with His help, we are able to overcome this fear, and we are able to follow the things that He's asking us in itself. And when we follow that, even though there might be a little bit complications, it might be difficult at times, we have that fulfillment in that joy in our hearts that doesn't come from anything else in itself. So it's all these studies is kind of going to the university. However, we have this spiritual part of it that we don't have in the in the university sometimes, not in this level, because we have a constant spiritual direction. We have to do all the liturgy of the hours. We have mass every day. We have a lot of retreats. We have a lot of workshops, information relating to spiritual things, to human parts. We get all the also psychological help whenever somebody needs it in itself. They might be going through a difficult time at the moment, or they might be going through a lot of anxiety because of feeling overwhelmed in itself. And then at the same time, once we are ordained, we are assigned to a parish. Now, the life of the priest in the parish is great. It's a lot of work. It's very spiritual, but we are also human in itself. So, you know, our day varies. It's like we're not having a specific schedule. There's some things that are common. Like I have some meetings that I had to be there all the time, like staff meeting. You know, how great staff meetings are, but it's some of the things that, you know, like I had to do as part of my work. You know, I had to celebrate Mass every day in that sense, whether they are on here or someplace else, and listening to confessions as well. But other than those things that are said that I have to do, my day can be from doing just those things all day to having no time during the day for not anything else. I can go tomorrow into the office. I can tell you right now, I only have one thing in my schedule for tomorrow, and that's Mass and confessions afterwards. But I can promise you that as soon as I get into the office tomorrow, I'm going to have people calling, wanting anointing, people calling, wanting to talk to a priest. I will have things going on in the office that I need to be doing. I will have to do all the work that I haven't done that I need to do, that I've been behind of. But my day sometimes, like, it can be just one thing in the schedule, but once I reach that office and I start that day, my days just start to be full. And sometimes I finish my day around like 8 or 9 or so in the evening, depending on what's going on. It's very rare that we have not much going on in that sense. Even though there might just be one thing in the schedule, once you are out there, people start coming and they start wanting, needing stuff. Emergencies happen all the time. At any moment, somebody can call us and say, oh, my mom is dying, or oh, my brother is in the hospital, we need somebody to anoint them. If they call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go to the hospital, and I know that person, especially if they are dying in itself, in that sense. If somebody called me at midnight and they're having a midlife crisis and they're really bad and they really need to talk to somebody, then I had to be there to talk to those persons, because it's something like a difficulty that they're going through. In a way, that's what we are here for in itself. So in the ministerial part, it's like sacraments, it's blessings, it's car blessing, house blessings, especially in the weekends, weddings, quinceañeras, presentations, masses, confessions, especially this time of Lent and Advent, penance service all over the place. We having to go and confessing for 2 hours or so. If I am lucky enough, I only confess 1 hour after the daily mass. If not, it can be 1.5 hours, 2 hours. It depends on how many people come and what people need in itself. So all of these things are great. We love it. It doesn't mean that we don't get tired. It doesn't mean that we don't get exhausted. Every now and then we have things like this, like somebody invites us over to talk in itself about something, about a topic, about giving a class, about just sharing with the youth or the kids in itself. We have a school here, so part of our job is also going to the school, which I haven't been doing a good job, but it's a part of going to the school, visit the kids, be with them, be part of it in itself. And that's without counting also all the office work. Preparing these types of things, if I am in charge of, like for example, I am in charge of funerals, so I am in charge of coming up with a whole new program for funerals and writing everything that we have to do and how that is going to work, and meeting with the people and talking and getting volunteers and promoting that, and seeing how we are going to deal with the people who come and are suffering, are grieving, and all that types of situation, and training volunteers to have to do that. And all of these things are done through volunteers if we don't have the people that work in the office, because we don't really have the people in itself. But a lot of times it's like putting all that work into all of these programs in order to help and provide for the needs of the parish. In my day off, it's different, I'm human. I keep telling myself that I should go to the gym, but as you can see, I don't do it. So it's a matter of, the things that you enjoy as a human. A lot of priests enjoy video gaming, so people buy video games and enjoy playing video games. Some people like running, exercising, they can do that. Some people enjoy hiking, they go and do hike. Going out to dinner with a friend, going to the movies, going to watch a play, going to the theater in itself. Some of these things that are very normal, that are very human, as everybody have the things that they enjoy that can relax them in itself. It's good to stay sometimes a little bit away from the parish on your day off, because that way you relax, you refuel your energies, and then you're able to come back full of energy to face whatever you need to face the next day in itself. Priests only get 1 day off, so it's like you take that day off. You have rights to your vacations, but you have to see when can you take those vacations, because whenever we leave, we had to leave somebody to take our celebrations. So my schedule for my celebrations for the week is done, and if I decided to go now and to take days off other than my normal day off, then I will have to find a priest to cover me. I cannot just leave and not leave somebody to cover my masses and my confessions. If I can find anybody to do so, then I can leave, because I had to be here and fulfill my obligations. Even on my day off, sometimes people calling, hey, we need help. Can you help us with the math on the evening? And I look at my calendar, if it's my day off, sometimes I may say, can you find somebody else? And they like cry and no, and oh my God, it's the end of the world, we can't find a priest. Okay, fine. So I even take sometimes part of my day off to go and do a celebration, which is not the end of the world in itself, because I take most of the day off, but it's also part of the things that we do as, because we love our ministry, sometimes it's necessary We understand the importance of rest, having that day off, but at the same time, we also understand the need for the sacraments in itself. So, like I say, for things that we do, some priests have habits, they like puzzles, so they do that. They have things that they collect because they enjoy collecting things. I'm kind of boring, so I don't do much in itself. I don't really have anything else. Father John de Guzman, I don't know if you know Father John de Guzman, but he and I are really close. So he have a PlayStation 4, so he kept like, you should get one because it should be fun, and then we can play together. And it's like, do I really want a PlayStation in itself? And it's like, well, I need something to do, I need kind of like a hobby. So I'll see if I can, I'll see if I try. But I remember that whenever I was a kid, my cousins had a Xbox, and every time we played, I always was the one who didn't know how to move around. They killed me really fast, and it was like, what's the point? I'm always dying, they're always killing me, so I just never played video games. So for me, it was like, if I get a PlayStation, I'm going to be terrible at it, and it's like, it's just going to be really hard for me to get used to all of this stuff. But he finally convinced me, so I got one, and so I was like, okay. So I've been playing it, and I'm like, oh, this is not as bad as I thought I was going to be. So it just became something else that every now and then, if I have time, I play. As I thought, I don't play as often in itself, but whenever it's on my day off, I do take some time to play something in it. So it's all of these things that, like I said, we're humans. There's these regular things. We sin like everybody else, so we also go to confession. The priests are not exempt from confession. The priesthood is a sacrament and the graces to serve and for others. One of the things, if you went to Mass this weekend, you saw that no matter how much the devil tempted Jesus this weekend, he never did what he was tempted to do in itself. Why? Because everything that the devil was asking him to do was to do things for himself. Turn these stones into bread because you are hungry. You are the Son of God, so nothing should happen to you. And all the temptations about that the devil was giving Jesus was all about making Jesus everything about him and not about God. You saw that he didn't do it because it's pretty much the same thing that happened with the priesthood. The priesthood is not something that is for me. The graces and the power that I have is only for others. Meaning that I cannot absolve my own sins in itself. I cannot anoint myself, even though I am a priest. My power as a priest is for others, is for the community, is for the people. And so as a priest, I had to go to confession to another priest. If I get sick, I need to be anointed by another priest. I can bless my own holy water, yes, I can do that much. But other than that, when it comes to the sacraments, I had to receive them by somebody else. Because the graces of the priesthood is for others, it's not for me. Just like the power that Jesus had was for everybody else, it wasn't for his own self. So that's what the priesthood is all about, serving and service to others in itself. Anybody have any questions right now?